Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So Tarek, our continuing series, is that an analog in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me? Where I go over the Analogue Pocket hardware, the emulators you can use in OpenFPGA, how to get them set up, and how to play some games and have fun doing it. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Sega Game Gear, the also ran handheld of the generation that competed against the Game Boy, and while it had a lot of fun games, absolutely did not succeed, and we never really saw another handheld from Sega again. Before I get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But I will say right off the top, setting up the Game Gear is the easiest setup that you're going to deal with under OpenFPGA for the Analogue Pocket. So part of this video is just going to be me recommending games to you, but I want to make sure you know what you need to do so you can start enjoying Game Gear games on your Analogue Pocket. So you'll see here I have a list of games, all games that I own, and some fun games for the Game Gear. They are in zip format, so all you're going to do is go ahead and unzip those files because you want to get to the bare file inside of it, the .gg extension, which is going to be for Game Gear. There's only one extension here, unlike Game Boy and Game Boy Color, so just make sure that your files have that .gg at the end and you should be fine. Although I will have a word about files later because I did find that some versions of these games would just absolutely not load up on the Analogue Pocket, so a little bit more on that later. But now that we have all of the different games we need, including those file extensions that are correct, we'll just go ahead and copy them, and we're going to move over to our micro SD card on the Analogue Pocket itself. You'll see here we have the folder assets. If you don't have that, you need to run Pocket Updater. I'll get to that in just a moment. But Game Gear is going to be under the following folder. It can be a little bit tricky, but it's going to be under GG. They didn't really indicate that much. They could have gone Game Gear. So if you're looking for that Game Gear folder, just be aware it's just GG. We're going to go ahead and copy our games into this folder, and that's literally all we need to do to make sure we have all the files required. There is no BIOS for Game Gear. You put your games in the GG common folder, and you're good to go. And if you don't have any of these folders, that means you haven't run Pocket Updater yet. I do have a link below to the tutorial to how to set up your Pocket for the first time, so all of these different folders get compiled, all of the cores come down, and you can actually start enjoying Game Gear games on your Pocket, because if you haven't done that yet, you're not ready to play. Go under OpenFPGA, it's under Handheld, and you're going to see Game Gear right here. There is only one core for this, so there is no change core option. So just go ahead and pick whichever game you want, hit that A button, and you will see that it quickly loads up, goes to a black screen for just a moment, and then if you see the Sega logo, that means you're 100% working and ready to play a game. Now if you go to the menu here, be aware that memories is a thing, and we do have save states here on the Game Gear, so you can save your state wherever you want. And as far as core options are concerned, there's absolutely nothing to have to deal with. You can remap your controls to whatever you want, but otherwise there's nothing under this menu to actually articulate. It's probably the most limited core of all, but honestly, what do you really need to do with a Game Gear? But the great thing is, because the Game Gear was a handheld and it just uses that 2-button setup with a little bit of a diagonal to it, the controls, both the D-pad and the buttons, work extremely well for actually emulating what original Game Gear hardware would do. I would say in the hand this feels awesome. It just does work really well. You get a decent D-pad, solid buttons, you're not going to be using the shoulders for anything whatsoever, so the Pocket's really set up amazingly well to run Game Gear. But if you want to go docked, pretty much anything with a D-pad and 2 buttons on the face are 100% going to work for you for whatever you want to play. So pick the controller you like and just kind of go with it and have some fun. Now if you do load up a game and you see this gray screen pop up, that means the game files you have are not working on the core. It seems like Game Gear is more sensitive to the file than any other core I've worked with on Analogue Pocket, so just grab some new files until this screen goes away. There's definitely some resources out there for you. But as we load up into Rystar here, an awesome version of the game for the Game Gear, I absolutely love the color space and overall visual quality for playing on the Analogue Pocket, and obviously if you're docked like I am right now, it looks incredible as well. And that's the thing, if you have an original Game Gear, even with a screen mod, the Analogue Pocket screen is so good. It is an amazing way to play, and if you want to actually dock a Game Gear at home, good luck with that. I'm not even sure if there's a mod available to get HDMI out, but this just looks incredible. The Analogue Pocket and the core for it does such a great job of emulating what a Game Gear would do. There's so many awesome games, but comment down below and tell me what your favorite game on the Game Gear is. I would be curious. Now the Game Gear did have some audio that kind of sounded a little bit hollow, a little bit tinny on original hardware, and that is what you're going to get here. It's not perfect sounding audio because it is doing what the original hardware would have done. Go ahead and listen and you'll understand a little better. Sounds exactly like a Game Gear should, and if you do hear a little bit of clipping in the audio, that's because the Game Gear audio hardware seem to love to do that as well. If you put a headphone in the headphone jack, you're going to hear a little bit of that. But the great thing is Game Gear for a lot of people is an undiscovered library. Something like Axe Battler here is like a role-playing version of Golden Axe, where you get both this overworld role-playing game aspect as well as random encounters, and you get 2D side-scrolling levels. And like I said, this is the easiest core to set up, so I figured I'd share some games with you guys to get you more compelled to play Game Gear. You'll see here we get a little random encounter like a role-playing game, but it is a beat-em-up hack and slash there, and if you actually go into any area, the game is then going to become a 2D side scroller. This is one of the best games on the Game Gear in my opinion. It's definitely one you should check out, because compared to Game Boy and Game Boy Color, not many people had a Game Gear back in the day. I did because I was a huge Sega fan, and of course I wanted to have one, but I know a lot of you are probably going to come into the Game Gear for the first time with Analogue Pocket. But tell me down below, did you own a Game Gear back in the day? What's your favorite game? I would be curious who has one, who had one, and who is new to it from the Pocket. But trust me, if you are new to the Game Gear, definitely play Axe Battler. It's basically like a beat 'em up and a 2D side-scrolling game mixed together with a role-playing game. It's one of those things. You've probably played Golden Axe 100 times before, but I feel like not many people actually ever talk about Axe Battler, which totally bums me out because it's an awesome game. Just make sure you don't die to a snake. Seems like a really bad way for Axe Battler to die. But it's got such a good graphical style, it's so much fun. It's definitely a game that I recommend you guys check out. It is an awesome time. Now on the other front, there's just some Game Gear games that really don't work that well. There's a fun version of Samurai Spirits, but it kind of waters down the mechanic to the point where it's really difficult to actually play a fighting game with just 2 buttons. But the great thing is you can really explore the library. You can find hidden gems like Axe Battler, and you can find totally decent kind of play around and forget about it games like Samurai Showdown. But of course, kart racing was huge back in the day, and Sega did not want to be left out, so you have Sonic Drift on the Game Gear as well. This is basically Mario Kart except in the Sonic universe, and it shows a lot of the fun pseudo-scrolling abilities of the actual Game Gear hardware in and of itself. It's an awesome game, definitely only takes like 10 to 15 minutes to have fun with it, and that's the great thing about the Pocket. These games are portable, they don't take long to play, and it lets you play whatever you want, whenever you want. But have fun exploring the Game Gear library. That's the thing that I really want you to take away from this video, especially because it is so easy to set up. There's a ton of hidden gems on the Game Gear, and you're going to have an absolute blast playing them. But if you follow this setup tutorial like I showed you, you'll be playing Game Gear games as well, and if for any reason, even though it's an easy one, you run into any trouble, leave me a comment down below and I'll be happy to help. But tell me what tutorial you want to see next. I've got a lot of different videos for Pocket planned, but if there's a video, even not a tutorial, that you're interested in, tell me down below and you never know, maybe I'll make it. But short of that, if you never had a Game Gear back in the day, be prepared to have a lot of fun because it's got an awesome library and there's so much stuff worth playing. But I'll have more videos throughout the week. I'll be back next weekend with more Pocket, but short of that, go play some Game Gear and have a great weekend. Bye bye.